Greg, still playing the violin?
I don't play violin, I play fiddle.
What's the difference?
Redneck. You asked for it, you got it.
What is the difference?
No difference, just the style.
Absolutely nothing different
Nowhere,
in the two instruments.
nothing different. Maybe a little setup on the bridge. Not really anything significant.
So why do you call it the violin, the fiddle, rather than the violin?
Well, we play country, southern rock, a little bit of bluegrass. That's really the difference in it. It's just the style of music. Use the bow, of course.
Where'd you learn that?
Well, it runs in my family. I had an uncle play. My grandfather played.
Let's see, no, J.D. Foster, how's that relation?
That relationship goes back to childhood. My dad was a barber, and he started out at 5 Points. We went to Knoxville Barber College. Spent 6 months over there and learned the craft, learned the profession, got his license as a master barber and all that good stuff. Came back to Red Saffles down at 5 Points by Howard Thompson's hardware store, if you recall that, back 60s. Anyway, my daddy worked for Red for a couple of years, got his apprenticeship under, because that's what you had to do. You had to come under someone in order to fulfill your license agreement and all that for the state. And after a year or so with Red Saffles, Red's barbershop, he found some property over on Wildwood Avenue and bought that property, built a barbershop, and built it 2 stages. There was one side of it was a barbershop, and then he built my mother a beauty shop next door. And eventually they opened the wall up whenever he bought another piece of property across the street and built another barbershop. And so they opened the wall up, and my mother took that whole building, which is eventually, once we were out there, they were out of the business. Once they retired out, that beauty shop became A&A Glass, and it's a car lot now. But at one time, he owned that whole strip up through there.
Was it sort of on the corner or not?
No.
Real narrow lot, not very deep.
Which one? The second barbershop.
Yeah, second barbershop.
Yeah, it was just a little 3.
Was that a better place to be then?
Actually,
right?
it was pretty good. It was good. I don't think he ever made over $3 a haircut. That's what he always told me.
Well, you've got a lot of hair.
Well,
How do you get that?
Don't ask me. Must be a good gene pool. I don't know. But I started actually gray at about 17 and started turning white about
I don't know what it is about
16.
some people's DNA. I'm bald and you've got hair.
That's just life. Some got it. Some of us got it. Some of us don't.
If you had my face and I had your hair, we'd be doing good.
Real funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, my tie to J.D. Foster and Alvin and all that bunch comes from childhood. I would go to work with my daddy at the barbershop, and he had a lot of ventures. He was pretty good businessman, He didn't just cut hair. But anyway, I would walk down to Foster's or I think it was Mason's store on down and get a Coke. And, we had the bottle of Cokes, back then, the 6-ounce bottle of Coke.
What was Foster's doing then?
They had a garage. And it was actually below where the original A-frame. Yeah, the original A-frame was. And J.D. and Alvin worked on cars. And through that time, it just evolved, and I grew up and learned how to play the fiddle a little bit.
So there's no relation between you and J.D.?
No relation
For some
whatsoever.
reason, I always connected you with J.D. Foster and the Randolph guy.
Clint?
Yeah, did he play?
He played, no, I don't think he did. He may have played banjo. I can't remember. It's been so long. I think he did play banjo.
I think he played the banjo.
Yeah. But anyway, a few of us get together. J.D. just invited me one time, and that was when they lived he and Shirley lived in the house on the corner. I think it's 10th Street comes out right there. They lived in a little house on the corner, and there'd be 4 or 5 of us around there, and we had all kinds of people pass through that little place, and eventually. And we would have pretty good little crowds down there, just a little picking, just little jam sessions. We had steel guitar, Jerry Brown. We had Chuck Crittenden on keyboard, Don Sewell on the drums, Charles Kincaid, or Charlie.
That's who I was thinking, Charles Kincaid.
Charlie was on the Gretsch.
No relation between you and Charles Kincaid?
No relation to any of them. We had Joe Wunby.
That's my uncle.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Charles Cartwright or Charlie Cartwright.
Charlie, yeah.
That was the core group.
He wrote a song.
I don't know.
About the mule and Jake.
Oh, yeah.
But where did you learn to play? Were you musically inclined?
Well, I was musically inclined through the DNA, and as I said, my grandfather played on my daddy's side, and my uncle played, and actually I've still got that fiddle. My grandpa and uncle played, and I wrote a story when I worked for the Banner. I wrote a story about Grandpa's fiddle, and Grandpa's fiddle was the first fiddle. To the best of my knowledge, he told me this story years ago. Grandpa's fiddle was the first musical instrument besides the rest of the band, which played at the Cherokee Hotel the day that, I guess it was BAC or WCLE, one of the 2 radio stations, whichever one it was, went on air in Cleveland, Tennessee. And that happened at the Cherokee Hotel, in the lobby of the Cherokee, back many moons ago. And I figured at that point in time, I figured up the years, how many years it had been since it had occurred. They had that little opening day concert, I guess you'd call it, at the Cherokee. And I figured it up, and it was 40, 50, 60 years, something like that. And what I included in the story was the fact that I was going to play that same fiddle again on the courthouse square, just a block or so away from there, for the block party of that particular year.
Yeah.
And we formed a band, myself, Jeremy Buckbeard, let's see, Adam Beard, his brother, guy we named Cookie, he played the guitar. Don, let's see, who else was it? Wilford Cheatham and his brother. Wilford played the keyboard, and we had the Southern Rock Group, Southern Rock Group, and came right straight out of the box. Never played a show before in our lives. Practiced and came up with songs. Had a great songwriter, who actually was really a songwriter. And that's a different story. But that story reaches all the way to California and totally untouched, between a relationship there. And come to find out.
There's a whole story there.
There is definitely a story. Okay. Anyway, here's our tie. I learned how to play the fiddle through DNA, probably, musical inclination. But I also had a little help. The help I had was from Travis Tritt's fiddle player, who was Tim Passmore. And Tim still plays. When he was 11 years old, he was already winning state championships, The only other person close to him that you could actually say was that close to his style and his ability, his talent, would be Mark O'Connor, who you hear on just about every record or tape or whatever they do now, CD. Mark was the premier studio musician. He took the place of other fiddlers who had come up through time, Chubby Wise, different people, He fell into that groove where he was the studio musician to go to for fiddle. And but anyway, Tim in his own right still is an awesome guitar player. Well, played guitar, did backup vocals, did some production work, and played the fiddle for Travis for 10 or 11 years.
But why the fiddle? Why not the guitar?
I don't know.
Why did you pick
I
up the?
can't pick anything. I never could pick anything. You know, I just played the fiddle.
Isn't that the same thing?
Huh?
Isn't that the same thing?
No. I can't get left and right going on a guitar. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
But playing the fiddle, it's just.
Yeah, bow work. Bow and fingers. You know, you got to get it all together.
But you can't do the.
Yeah, I can a little bit.
But I've seen you every now and then go like this.
Oh, yeah. That's just tuning. But anyway, that's the musical, end of it, basically. But the story about Buck and the band. We formed this little band and practiced, came up with a few songs. We had a songwriter who was his brother-in-law, Buck's brother-in-law. His name was Bobby Payne. Okay, I'm in the studio one day. I was a photographer, at one point in time in my life. I got a phone call and this guy, heavy California accent. Hey, I'm coming into town. I'd like to have some pictures made of my son for Christmas, and we'll make Christmas cards. And he went through this spiel, and it was a little weird request, a little odd, a little out of, just a little out of the ordinary. And he said, what I want to do, he said, my son's 3 or 4 years old. We'll have him in an all-leather outfit with a little biker's hat and all this stuff, and the spikes around his spike collar around his neck. We're going to have his little chihuahua with him with a spike collar. We've got a little Christmas tree. We've got a little guitar. We're going to put skulls on the Christmas tree, and he's going to be standing there with a guitar, and we're going to have Christmas cards made. So, okay, I made the appointment. Sure, I can do it. I made the appointment for him. A few weeks later, here comes this Jaguar pulling in the parking lot.
Where's the parking lot?
Parking lot was down at my studio beside the boys' club. And came pulling in the parking lot, and this big, tall lady gets out. This guy with a beard and a little fancy hat, gets out. And this little kid, they start dragging all this stuff out. I say, oh, what is this? And so they bring it on in, we set it up, and I shoot pictures. Well, ended up, they were a pretty good customer, One time, they lived in California. So, a few years down the road, we met Buck. And as I said, this is a deal, which time follows time, and things happen, 10, 15 years later, we meet Buck. And Buck just out of the blue one day says, let's get a band together. Now, Buck had never sang a day in his life, to my knowledge. Couldn't play nothing, anything at all. And so we got a few people together. We got, like I said, Wilfred Cheatham on the keys, Adam, Buck's brother, who works for the sheriff's office now. And Don Wade actually played with us at one point in time, and Mark Darnell, who's the city policeman now, he played with us at one time. But we got this core group together and started writing songs, and this man named Bobby wrote some songs for Buck. I didn't think anything about it, my brother-in-law. So we went to Georgetown to practice across from the fire hall. There's a big house back up across the road there, across the highway. You can't see it from the roadway. It's a gated place. All you can see is a little barn in front. There's pasture, and then you go back up in there through the gate. There's a pretty good little house up in there. Well, it was Buck's sister's house. Oh, they live in California. Are you putting these ties together yet?
I'm starting to.
Okay, well, we go out there on Sundays and practice and do our song sets. And we had actually one song is called Buck's Pocket Road. It's a love story. It's how Bobby met Nadine, who is Buck's sister. So still nothing clicked, you know. Well, one day we was taking a break, you know, and we was going to do something. We kicked a breaker or something. We went back to the little closet right off the basement where we practiced. And this, like I said, this is a big house. Nobody lived there.
Yeah.
Swimming pool and everything, but nobody lived there. And we went back to the closet to kick the breaker back on. And I looked down and I seen a picture laying in a box.
Golly.
I said, who is this, Buck? He said, it's my nephew. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. I said, so this is your nephew. I took this picture years ago.
What are the odds?
Oh, what are the odds? But Bobby Payne is a songwriter, and he is, you can Google him and you can find his songs. I don't know if he ever had anything really, really big, but he's very published. And he wrote several of our songs. And like I said, the first one, Buck's Pocket Road, is a love story. How he met Nadine. He made a phone call, got a wrong number to Polk County Courthouse, of all places, in Tennessee. And he talked to Nadine.
You can't make this stuff up.
He talked to Nadine, and they talked further along. And they got together. He came to Tennessee, and as he made his way to Buck's Pocket, literally Buck's Pocket, the middle of Buck's Pocket.
Yeah, nowhere near Polk
Where
County.
Buck's Pocket actually is, where the steel was, you know. As he traveled down that road, he wrote a song about it. Come past the stop and go, might see a pond, might see a I don't know. I can't remember all the lyrics. I don't remember many lyrics. But anyway, it was a pretty doggone good song. And that was our signature. And people just loved it. They went crazy over it, you know. But he also wrote another song, and that's one of the ones that we actually recorded these. And the other song was the end of his love story with Nadine. And that was called Heartbreak City Bound. And it was a really cool song. If you recall, J.
Is he
Michael.
still alive?
Oh yeah, he was actually one of his. I'll say it this way, I know one of his songs is published and was used in Jackass 2, the movie Jackass 2, and that connection comes all the way back around again to the Wades. Johnny Knoxville is a Wade.
Don Wade's
Don Wade's cousin, yeah. And see, Don is my cousin. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All the way around. It comes all the way around. But it's just odd, you know, little odd things like that. But
you said a minute ago, time follows time. What do you mean by that?
Time follows time. You know, you see one thing here, and then down the road, there's something comes back to tie that story together. You know, the picture, the photography came back around. After all these years, it came back around to another part of our lives.
That time followed this time.
Exactly. You know, and that's one thing. When I wrote for the Banner, I would always start with the end. I would start with the end of the story.
Is that the way you write literature, or is that unusual?
I have no idea. I don't know how to write.
So what?
And that's God's honest truth. I didn't know how to do this. You know, I didn't know I could write. Realistically, I was never good at English in school, in grammar school, and I had to have a tutor. And she even made the statement, I didn't know you could write like that. You know, I said, well, I didn't either.
How do you get a job at the Banner writing if you can't write?
I have no idea. I wasn't looking.
How did that happen?
Donna made me get into it.
Oh.
Well, actually, what it was, the digital age was coming about, and I seen into the future, I guess, let's say it that way. And I'd already told some of my customer base at the studio that before long, that our time with phones with landline phones was going to be limited because of the of the digital age coming about. And at that point in time, the cell phones were really starting to pick up, the cell phone business.
85,
Shoot, I don't know.
86,
Somewhere around in there. I had a bag phone, if that tells you anything. And anyway, I told my customer base, some of the ones that repeat, that we did other stuff for too, that the time of the cell phone was going to come around, and I could smell that coming in the photographic business as well. And what I was doing a lot of in the evolution of photography in my life, I was already looking for ways to do it for the future, even though I didn't know that I would make the decision to walk away from it. And what happened was, really simply, I walked away from that, but Donna had went to the Banner for a year or two prior to me going. And when she was a little squeamish about, she was the photographer, she was the official photographer for the Banner. And she didn't like doing the wrecks and all this good stuff, So I kind of picked that up, just side, gratis, free, no charge.
Because she told you to.
No, not necessarily. I just did, and I had insurance companies had called as well when I was still in business, and they would need photography done of certain things, certain scenes, or certain buildings or vehicles, and then I kind of got into the forensic end of it. See, I went from basically wedding photography into expanding the horizon a little bit and getting into a few other little things. And so I had my foot in the door with everybody. Emergency management, police department, sheriffs, fire and all that stuff, before I ever stepped into the job at the newspaper. And, they asked me if I could do it and if I'd be interested. And I said, well, we can do that. And I had a good 14 or 15 years of that, and it was interesting, did a lot of good things, and helped solve a lot of cases and crime in Bradley County. And I had a passion for trying to help the public and trying to keep everybody safe. I got into that public safety end of it, and I actually won. I think I was awarded public safety or something. I collected quite a few awards.
And that was while working for the Banner.
Yeah, but those awards and a $2 will buy you a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
But I didn't do it for awards, and I really, a good example is that one time, and this was when Dan Gilley was sheriff, we had 23 fatalities in 1 year in Bradley County. And the year that I left the Banner, the year that I retired, which was 2014, I think, the year I retired, we had 6 that whole year. So, in other words, through public safety, by what I did, trying to make people aware of the dangers of driving, whether inebriated or sober, there's still dangers, There's always speed involved. It doesn't matter if you're going 20 miles an hour, there's still speed. There's all these factors that come together to an end result, and whether the end result's good or bad. The bad naturally affects more than one person. But throughout that time, that was one of my goals, was to try to help Bradley County and Cleveland and the area to be safer through working to basically teach, the dangers of this. And I feel I was very successful at it. From 23 down to 6 is pretty doggone good.
That's a lot.
It was pretty good because Colonel Tracy Trott, now retired from THP, he came into town and he requested me to come see him. So, you know, and one of the last things that I did while I was at the Banner, and I was the police reporter. I was my official title, and I was the only one in the region.
I remember when you got that.
Yeah, I was the police reporter, and I was the only one in the region that had that title. And one of the last things I did was a program, in-service training for a drug enforcement agency, and that was very interesting. I had a good little conversation with area folks, you know, in the law enforcement end, and how to talk, and the importance of the media in their job, you know. And I got to call a couple of them out, you know, a couple of the locals out on some of their downfalls, you know, what they should have done and what they shouldn't do.
Did you see photography as an art or as a job?
I saw photography as nothing. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got out of high school. And I didn't go to college. I took a little bit, did go just a little bit, but not anything, nothing relative. Actually, I ended up filling in for Rudy Achata, teaching photography up there one year at Cleveland State. But I had no idea what I was going to do. I went to work at Magic Chef, worked for 5 years, and then I got fired, thank God. You know, I was blessed there.
What'd you do?
Well, I went from there.
I mean, what'd you do to get fired?
Well, I just didn't want to do something. You know, and not meaning to pull politics into this. Yeah, I see a lot of insubordination in our politics today, you know.
But you didn't have to take it at 25, right?
No, I didn't have to. I didn't have to take it. I was too young for that. And believe it or not, Hugh Harris was the man who let me go. He said, "You ever been in the military?" I said, "No." I said, "Other than being born there, I was born at Fort Campbell." And so I'm an Army brat. But anyway, I said, "No, just when I was born, you know," and I don't remember much about that. I seen a light. I seen a big light, and all of a sudden it was my birthday. I didn't know it. Yeah. But anyway, Hugh was the one that had let me go. And my uncle called me, and Claude Shell, and he said, "I got you a job, come on over here." So I went over to Polycraft, which was Dwayne Hooper used to run Polycraft. And that was under the Coppinger umbrella. And I went over there and worked for several years, and there was a sort of a recession. There was a recession. It was not sort of a recession. There was a recession. And they laid me off, which I enjoyed that. You know, I got to clean house and cook and all that good stuff, and tend the yard and sunbathe. I didn't see a thing wrong with being a housewife.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was off for 6 months or so, you know, drew a good little paycheck through unemployment and all that back when. And then my uncle called me again, Claude. He said, "Come on over here, I got your job." I'm fine. I'm enjoying this, you know. I got a little while longer, you know. But anyway, that was when I started with CPQ, Coppinger Photographic. It was CPQ is actually Coppinger, Parker, and Quintard. Ron Coppinger started, and this was the specialized end of it. The specialized end means the higher end wedding photography and etc. You know, family portraits, which are actually true family portraits, not the church directory or schools or anything like that. It's a little different beast. Different price structure, different quality, more quality control. Anyway, I went to work over there at CPQ and went to work in the shipping department. And worked there for quite a while. Then my uncle wanted me, I went to film processing, so I processed millions of rolls of film, literally millions of rolls. And Claude elevated me to that, you know, into that position. And I learned my craft there, my profession there. And in the meantime, I started photography. Well, no, prior to that, let me back up just a little bit. Claude had convinced Gary Coppinger to set up a mini lab situation, which we named Express Photo. Express Photo was at the portrait shop next door to
Baskin Robbins?
No, next door to actually it's where Dynasty is, behind where Dynasty is now. Dick's Graphics, I think, was in that building at one point. But anyway, it was a portrait shop and an Express Photo, all the same building. And it was a mini lab situation, which is a 1 hour turnaround. And we did disc film, 126, 110, 35 millimeter. And he sent me down there and I learned operations, total. Retail side, which is the business side, all technical. And I ran that. And I was liaison between the lab and the mini lab. In other words, if anything happened, I'd go down there and I'd straighten it out. And this meant employees and everything. And I would go down there, usually 10, 15 minutes I would have the problem solved. One time out of 5 or 6 years, I got stumped and had to call somebody in from Texas. I'd hired a manager down there, and or the company had hired a manager down there. Went down there leading up to this hiring of the manager. Went down there one time, and it was such a mess. We got rid of everybody, and I was down there for 6 months that time, training new people in. Mm-hmm. And then we hired Clark McDaniel, if you remember Clark, years and years ago. I can't even remember what Clark did prior to that, but he was a fairly well-known person. And we got him in there and got him set up, and he got in there one Saturday and got fooling with the coloration settings on the processor or the printer. Whew, yeah, that was everywhere. And so that was the only time I got stumped. And we had to call somebody in from Texas to come in, and it was a little expensive. And anyway, after that, I'd met Alan Frederick. This is how I got into photography. I'd met Alan Frederick. Oh, Alan, see, he had a stake in the portrait shop. He was actually the titled owner, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I never did get the whole story. That's one of those jumbled stories, you know. But anyway, Alan, Brenda, his wife, asked me, she said, would you like to learn how to do this? I said, well, sure. Because I had been piddling with photography anyway. And I started to go with Alan and Brenda to learn how to do wedding work. And I feel that he was probably one of the best instructors. Now, with that said, he taught me what to do. But I didn't know I had that natural ability to do and see and figure things out. And then the marketing part of it was another thing. Alan got sick and he passed away, and I just basically took over. Really, that's all you can say. And I had started the business. Then, actually, I'd bought his old van and worked out of home for a while, and was building that business up. And I found a good deal in a piece of property, a little building that would have been great, was great for me. And purchased that building and set up a little studio and went from there. And it just grew and grew. You know, I had the lion's share in Cleveland. Myself, we all shared the lion's share at one point in time. Myself, Jim Price, and Johnny Hayes. We all shared together. You know, we all worked real well together.
So now, Jim, I've got that stray cat out there is named Jim Price after Jim Price.
Really?
The black one.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, he showed up today. I got back from Jim's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
So I named it. It may be Jim.
Yeah. Well, you can't ever tell. But anyway, we all
So Jim had he had the wedding chapel out there off Urban Road.
yeah, at one point. But we all actually at one time, we all had the lion's share of business in town. And the most weddings that I did in 1 year was 110. And it was.
That's one every 3 days.
Oh, there's been days I had 8 in 3 days one time. And many days I had 2. Most of the time I had 2 weddings in a day. And it was not unusual to have 3 weddings Friday night and 2 Saturday.
What'd you do when they?
I have had 3 on Saturday.
What'd you do when they wanted to talk and you got off schedule and?
Oh, I didn't do that. We had a system.
Yeah.
And that system was great. Out of all the issues or problems that we've had throughout that time, I can count on one hand. And one of those issues was not our fault. They did get out of program. And actually, I had another couple that was there that had done their wedding. They said, "What is going on?" I said, "Hey, it's not my fault." I said, "We know how you act. We know what you do." Because when I did a wedding, they never felt it. And I don't know if I did your wedding way back when, and I did Gwen, our cameraman and editor-in-chief production officer over here, did his wedding way back when. And the system worked, It was very efficient. You didn't get worn out throughout the wedding day, the process, the ceremony. Everything was basically a 20 to 30 minute segment. Where it'd be bride, groom, wedding, reception, altar return, which was the big family groups and et cetera.
They call it the altar return?
Altar return, yeah. And that's where you go pray and get ready for the real hard life, But anyway.
You ever think that people will have ceremonies for divorces? Like take pictures of the...
I don't know, but I could go through several myself. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Just part of life. But
now you said you started with the end at the beginning.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Give me
an example.
On a story?
Yeah, give me an example of that.
That's you create the lead by telling the end of the story first. And then you fill in the blanks.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
That's not what everybody did.
I don't know. I don't know everybody else's style. As I said, I don't know how to write.
But you wrote a lot for the banner.
Oh, yeah, I was the chief. I led everybody in stories. I could do 3 to 4 a day.
And you generally started with the end?
Generally started with the end of every situation.
Give me an example of starting with the end.
Well, I'd probably have to look and see. Okay, 3 people were injured in a crash, so and so,
Oh my goodness, I better read that.
Yeah. Okay, you start with that. And then you fill in the blanks and then tie it back in at the end.
Instead of starting what would be the other way of doing it? Starting at the beginning?
Yeah,
they were driving down the road?
I guess, yeah. And you can do that, but that's dramatizing. You're dramatizing.
You were doing time follows time. You were showing the end result and then coming back to it.
Oh yeah, and I had a lot of, as I said, throughout the course of my time with the newspaper, I had the opportunity to help in a lot of ways with just simple burglaries. I could name suspects just by reading the police report. Seriously. I recognized homicides that were coming up, and I'm not bragging on it. It's just something that happened. In fact, Donna, I take a nap through the day. I'm getting old, but anyway, I take a nap throughout the day, and Donna came, woke me up, so I could get ready
Yeah.
to come over here and talk with you. And she said, will you come out here and tell your aunt about the Salvation Army homicide, the murder? And so I went out there and I gave her the story, My aunt used to work at the Goodwill, and she knew the family, but she didn't know that their sister, who ran the Goodwill back years ago, that's how she met these people, was through the Goodwill. She didn't know that their sister had been a homicide victim at 5 Points back in, if I'm not mistaken, 1988. And that's a very interesting story.
I remember
as well.
that.
That was,
Was that ever solved?
oh yeah, Rose Crabtree.
Wasn't it solved years later?
Yeah. Actually, how that story goes, the end of the story is the beginning. John Henrietta was one of the most prolific serial killers, and nobody knows it. Myself and Jerry Estes has all the files of Henrietta, and up in the last time I seen him was at his office up in Athens.
Now go back to the Henrietta. Who's that?
John Henrietta. He and Michael.
John Henrietta.
Henrietta. Henretta. I'll give you the short side of the story. He was raised in Pennsylvania, and he was always a problem child. His parents just threw him out to the wind, basically. Didn't ever know his dad. And mother was one of these, just kicked him out on the street. So he was homeless, basically, and pulled himself up, Had to fend for himself, per se. And he was always in trouble. Was stealing cars by the time he was 10 years old. And he and Michael, as time progressed, he grew up, he and Michael Goodhart got together in Pennsylvania. And they started a sweep through the South, which ended in Texas. And for Goodhart, it ended in Texas, let's say it that way. But they sexual assaults, murders, all the way through, and happened to stop it in Cleveland, Tennessee that day.
Now, why were they doing this?
They're just mean. They didn't know any better, I don't reckon. They'd never been taught.
Why Cleveland, Tennessee, and why downtown Cleveland?
They came into town, they seen what time the Salvation Army closed, and seen who was running it, which was a lady, and they went down to Beecher Watson's bar.
I remember that.
Down by Harold Thompson's.
Yep.
And 5 Points, Red's Barber
It's the
Shop.
catch now.
Pardon?
Is it the catch now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, they went down there and drank a few beers. And time passed. 5 o'clock, they get out of there. So they walk back up to what is now the Chattanooga Billiards Club, CBC, which used to be Tip's Market back when. And they went in the back door, and they sexually assaulted and killed Rose Crabtree. Robbed the cash register. Family got to missing her because she didn't come home to the kids.
Any thoughts of why they picked that?
Now, this
the
is
Salvation
right.
Army.
Well, they just stalked it out. They cased it, more or less. Basically, they seen that there was this ladies working in there, and they knew it would be an easy target. But anyway, coincidentally, see, the police department's right behind there.
Yeah.
I mean,
throw a
it's
rock.
right there. Y'all throw a rock and you're in the parking lot. But anyway, the family missed her. She was a couple hours late, didn't come home. So they contacted the police department.
Did you know Rose Crabtree?
No. They contacted the police department. They went and found her, found out what had happened. Well, the case went cold over time. Danny Chastain, and this is how it started to unfold later on, was Michael Goodhart was sick. He was terminally ill, and he was in Bastrop, Texas, in the prison out there. And he had wrote a letter to Jerry Estes, district attorney, And I read the letter, and it told of a homicide in Cleveland, Tennessee, back years ago, and it named John Henrietta. Henrietta was in Leavenworth at the time. So Danny and one of the old TBI agents went out to Leavenworth and interviewed Henrietta, and Henrietta confessed to it. Brought him back here. They brought him back to Cleveland to stand trial, Bradley County. And I was at the trial, watched the whole thing. Steve Bibb was the judge over that. That was when he was in the judiciary. And they convicted Henrietta of first-degree murder, gave him the death penalty. And Henrietta has since passed away, and he was the oldest person on death row at the time that he passed away. And it's a very interesting story.
Did he look mean?
Actually, he was really a docile person. And
What do you mean docile? Like passive?
Eventually, yeah, he was. Eventually. But that's part of the nature of these people. He allegedly found the Lord, and confessed, and prayerfully he's okay now, We don't know for sure, but, Anyway,
how many years was it?
I actually saw Steve Bibb cry on the bench when he had to announce the death penalty to him. He broke up in tears. And Bibb and Estes both really commended, even though he was a criminal, they still had that compassion, enough human compassion, to commend Henrietta on his changes and his demeanor.
So they thought he had really changed.
He respected them, and that's what they both told me, that he respected them, and that they were the nicest people, some of the nicest people he had ever met, even though they sent him to the death chair,
But why Cleveland? What made him get off the interstate?
Don't know.
Topic?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
To me, that's the mystery.
Yeah, that's
because
a
it's
great
not off
mystery.
the interstate.
No, not downtown. It wasn't.
I mean, you'd have a hard time finding Beechers if you were.
Oh yeah.
From somewhere else.
Oh yeah. That's there would have just been exit 20.
Yeah.
That would have been it, and in 1988 that would have been the only one because there was
exit 25.
I don't know.
Where the chalet.
Would there have been a 25 at that point? There could have been.
I think so.
There could have been.
Yeah, I think it was just 25.
Okay.
But still, it would have been an oddity to get all the way downtown Cleveland to Beechers.
Definitely.
Because Beechers wasn't even. I mean, if you weren't from around here, you'd be afraid to go in Beechers.
Oh Lord, yeah.
I've been in there.
Well, I was too when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything to look at.
No.
Hole in the wall. Talk about the hole in the wall. It was definitely a hole in the wall.
They played.
And I won't say about what I saw when I was a child. One time.
At Beechers?
No, not at Beechers. At another place, just passing down the street. Driving down the street with my parents on a Friday afternoon. I won't ever forget it. But anyway, it was. I'll have to tell you that off grid, because back in those times, some of these people were really, really tough.
Do you think that people are not as tough as they used to be, or as mean?
Oh, well, it's a different type of evil. I think. I think evil is evil. In my book, I think there's a different type of evil, a deceitful evil now, more so than what it was back then. Back then, it was probably just straight up,
Just mean.
Just mean, yeah. Yeah, just literally mean.
Now it's conniving and sneaky
Exactly,
mean.
manipulative. Work your way in, and the complexity. I guess that's how it's evolved. Is the complexity of how everything goes. As I said. Politically speaking, I think there's a lot of insubordination, in our political world now by our lawmakers, legislators, and
What do you classify the definition of insubordination?
Not doing their job, what they need to be doing, not. I mean, there's probably elements contained within, that in today's world that dips into the patriotism, being faithful to your country and everything, taking that allegiance literally, and would you die for your country?
It's to the point we're afraid to talk about it.
Exactly.
It's
I'm
scary.
I'm not going to be afraid to talk about it.
You even got fired at Magic Chef.
I got fired at Magic Chef. That ain't anything to me.
Excuse me.
Let me go back to that just a moment. I mentioned Hugh Harris.
Because that was interesting to me.
Hugh Harris was the one who let me go. Well, guess who comes to work for Coppinger?
Hugh Harris?
Years later, Hugh came to, and I said,
You weren't mad at him, were you?
No, Lord, no, I hugged him. But the thing about it was, is as a photographer, guess where you go a lot of times? You go to parties. Mm-hmm. Guess who was at the parties?
Hugh Harris?
Magic Chef.
Heads,
the Magic Chef. Jerry Ward.
I know Jerry. I like Jerry.
Oh yeah, Bill McClure, that bunch, that bunch of guys there. And I told him, I said, that's the best thing you boys could ever done to me. And here I was just playing a peon, Mm-hmm. I'm just totally a peon. They didn't have any idea who I was until I was in the photography world, and then they became my friends. Up to a year or so ago, I'd walk into Angela's restaurant over there, and the Magic Chef boys would get together, and have breakfast. Ward would see me come through the door. They didn't know who I was when I worked at Magic Chef.
What is it about, you have to be out there for people to know you?
To know you, yeah, exactly. I say a lot of things, I say it like this in a lot of cases. I know a lot of people. But when I say I know a lot of people, I mean I know them. I'm not just an acquaintance with them. And a lot of people know me, mm-hmm. whom I don't know, and I have no idea. And I won't comment much on that because, somebody might be watching that.
You're a personality.
You're the same. I'm sure you're the same way. And Gwen and everybody, I'm sure that you have people that you have no idea who they are.
Yeah, those say, hey, how you doing, Dee? I say, good, how you doing? I say, boy, I hope they don't ask for their name.
Yeah, I ran into one other. That's where that word, buddy, hey, honey, how you doing?
Can't say that now.
How you doing? Yeah. Well, you can't say that.
Can't even say that.
I say it anyway. I'm not worried about it.
Do you think that that in writing these articles all these years that it taught you to know human nature more?
Oh, definitely.
Than maybe I would.
Definitely. I've sat there at that keyboard. And literally just squalled, just cried. It's some of the things that I've written, and they're not even relative to me. It's just something. Something that tugs at your heartstrings. You get into a story, and you see the depth of it. One good example of that is Militia Gibson. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you remember that story. Let me see how to say that. I was in the umbrella of CASA, court-appointed special advocates, and what CASA does, it was a organization started to help kids in the judiciary. In other words, if they got into the judicial system through a family member who had done wrong, or there's people who are appointed as advocates for that child. They kind of watch over and monitor In other words, the family unit, make sure that family is doing the right thing for this child. Well, Militia Gibson was a prime example of a child who needed a court-appointed special advocate. And CASA is a nonprofit, and I was in the charter executive. What is it?
Now, Militia Gibson, that was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that was 1980. If I'm not mistaken, that was 1984.
No, maybe
Maybe earlier.
So what were you doing? What were you doing as a member of CASA at that time?
Well, as a member of CASA at that time, Suzanne Wisdom asked me to come on board of the executive board.
Why you?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Just did. Anyway, we started kicking around ideas of a good way to memorialize and fundraise for CASA, which now has expanded. It includes Polk County. So in other words, Bradley County had a CASA, and now it's taken Polk County. The new membership there at CASA, who of the directors and everybody, are totally different than what they were back when it was established, and they didn't have Polk County at that. They have Polk County now. But anyway, we came up with the Militia Gibson Moonlight Walk, and for those who don't know, Militia Gibson was 4 years old. Her stepfather and mother, her stepfather made her walk in a circle all night long and beat her and made her drink hot sauce when she wanted a drink of water. And the next morning she had passed away, and law enforcement was notified. And I mentioned Danny Chastain a while ago. Danny and Dewey Chastain both were involved in that case. And
I was going to high school with Dewey at the time, his boy.
Oh,
Big Dewey.
Yeah. Small, yeah. But anyway, Dewey and Danny were involved in that case, and as well Robert Lawson. If I'm not mistaken, Robert was the sheriff at that point. Anyway, Militia had been beaten and internal injuries, and she passed away. And it was a case which changed everything in the child's world as far as their welfare goes. It made new laws come about nationwide, not just in the state of Tennessee.
So that was nationwide, no?
Oh, it was a nationwide deal. I think every state in the union adopted new rules for child reporting, abuse reporting.
Didn't Hank Snow get involved in that somehow? Remember that?
Yeah, I think there was a concert. He had a concert.
He had a concert, yeah.
At Cleveland State, if I'm not mistaken.
Stayed at the chalet.
Nah, I'm not that old.
I'm
not as old as you. But anyway, this thing changed laws across the state, across the nation, and regarding child abuse and its reporting, and that is something. And I mentioned Robert Lawson just a few minutes ago, or a minute or so ago, but Robert apparently had, we all have Facebook now, and that's how we all keep up with each other. And Robert had witnessed a possible child abuse in the parking lot of Walmart one time, and this has been a few years ago, and he was really, it's one of those things you have to. If you don't report it, you are, they find, law enforcement can find out, and they can't prosecute you if you didn't do the right thing, because it's your civic duty to report something like this. And it may be a menial thing, but it's still a stain, and if you didn't do the right thing and do your civic duty and report a child being abused or misused in some way, that's on your conscience after that. So, especially if something happens to that child later. But this thing, the Militia Gibson Walk, is an annual thing. Of course, it didn't happen last year because of COVID. And during the first few years of it, all these players would be involved. Players such as Danny Chastain Dewey, Richard Fisher, who was the DA at that point in time. Whomever was involved in that case would come and support that walk. It was really amazing, and the turnout was great. It was a great fundraiser, which supported the office, the clerical, basically, and just a really good thing, And it's actually they're already in planning stages for this walk coming up.
I didn't know they still had that walk.
Yeah, they do.
Where they walk?
From the Greenway. They walk the Greenway to Church of God and then back. And there's several hundred people
And
usually
that's been
attend.
30 years ago, I guess.
Shoot, yeah, at least.
We don't even know the year.
I actually found her grave.
Where's it at?
I did several stories on that. And every year, of course, I did stories to remind people of the walk as well. And had her picture of her gravesite in the stone. It's at Sunset. It's on the north side. The crosses are up here, and her gravesite's down from there in that area.
Boy, it's so sad, isn't it?
Oh, it was a terrible situation, But that's one example of sitting at the keyboard, just thinking of what, and
All
it
you
just
were
brings
was
tears to
the writer.
Yeah, all I was the messenger.
You almost had to live it.
Oh yeah, I've lived a lot of it. And that's something that I found out later. Of course, any major incident in Bradley County, there's always a lot of support for the officers involved. We had let's say it this way, it would have been a Amber Alert several years ago from Michigan Avenue School when the dad took the two children to his home and that anyway, the responders always have that support system in the background they have psychologists, doctors, and chaplains and everybody to decompress, Well, I didn't have anybody. I would decompress on my own. And trust me, you think a war zone is bad.
What's the trick to decompressing on your own?
What I found really helpful with me in that is to try to reconstruct when I go to a crash scene and it'd be a fatality or a multiple fatality. I would just draw my mind away from that. As I said, that was pretty well my passion, was to try to keep people safe while driving. And I feel like that's still one of the greatest accomplishments. Even though there's so many things that I got to do, had that opportunity to do as the police reporter. That's well overshadowed, Those stories in that background there will overshadow so significantly what I did with just traffic,
I never thought about a reporter being under that type of mental stress from having to relive every story.
Yeah.
And you've got to be thinking, I want to add this, but the story's getting too long. What do I put in here?
You just find the words and abbreviate it. If it's not, maybe it's significant, maybe it's not. It's one of those things you weigh the options. You really need to go on the reporting, as far as the initial reporting goes, and you always do your best to attribute. That way, you get the monkey off your back, because I've had to go to court, depositions and stuff. And my publisher, Steve Crass, who's retired now, he retired just after I did. We kind of butted heads,
Steve Crass?
Yeah. You remember how Superman did with whatever his name was, the publisher for the Daily Planet.
Yeah.
You know, they always, Clark Kent and him always kind of butted heads.
What was that guy's name?
I can't remember. But anyway, we kind of clashed. But he told me, when I told him I was getting ready to retire, and he said, I kind of figured that. And because I retired a little early in life, had that opportunity to do it and took advantage of it, and I'm glad I did, you know. But anyway, he said, you know, I never get any complaints on you. And I said, well, I always see that as a good thing. He said, not in this business. and the thing about it is, like I said, we always clashed. We did clash, and that goes back to matching shift, I guess.
Yeah.
Because as I said, you know, I was a business person. I know how this stuff
I thought they
operates.
hired writers that had years of schooling and studying.
Well, usually do, I guess, but like I said, I didn't know anything about that job. I still don't.
Well, somebody must have picked up on the fact that you could do it.
Apparently so. My first day was a homicide, you know. My first day, just like your cousin Tim Gobble's first day on emergency management. His first day was at Olin Chemical.
That's right.
Or Olin Arch. But my first day was homicide. And coincidentally, as I said, you know, I saw homicides before they ever occurred. Coincidentally, on that first day, Daniel James was he was who I replaced at the Banner. Daniel took me over to the jail, over to the old Justice Center. And we walked in and showed me what to do. You know, go in here and get the reports and look at them. You can go back to the jail if you need to, look at the booking sheets. Back then, I did all that. I could go into the jail at any time, physically into the jail. But I had a code and walked into the office, you know, and went and read the reports. And coincidentally, there's a man and a woman standing out there, and they were complaining about a driveway, sharing a driveway over off of Polk County Avenue. And I can even give you the address, but I won't. Sometimes I'm sharp, sometimes I'm not, you know. I can remember some things I can't, but that one I can remember. They were complaining about somebody a shared driveway, and they wanted to file a report. Well, go back to the office. Daniel showed me how to operate the computer, and here I am, just totally out of pocket. I don't know how to push the buttons on this. I do a camera, but not this. A couple of hours later, guess what?
What?
Come over the little radio there. We have a shooting over off of Polk County Avenue, blah, 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 address.
You just thought the other report
Jump in the
was
car
wrong.
and go. Jump in the car and go. Guess who it was?
Who?
The people in the lobby complaining.
Golly. So you're saying you're at the Justice Center.
Oh yeah.
And so you're
We're sitting in the office at the Banner office writing this report up, writing these reports up. What it was called, police reporter. And now, that's another story. There was no jail dockets for a long, long time, if you recall.
Mm-hmm. Long time.
There's a reason for that too, and that relates back to Greg and Goldie Wattenbarger.
Yeah.
But
were you there when Goldie was there?
no. Donna was, and she loved him to death. Mm. He and I butted heads at one point, and there was no police report or jail dockets for a number of years, and that's another story. But anyway, we were sitting there writing this report up, and the radio comes over the radio. There's been a shooting over off of Polk County Avenue. We get over there, and guess who it was? It was the same folks that were in there in jail earlier, following this report about a shared driveway. Both the husband and wife were charged with homicide. The husband died before trial came up, and she was eventually just released because she didn't actually do the shooting. She was just basically an accessory, I guess, after the fact, and wasn't just by association.
Can you
That's how
read a
she was
story
charged.
now and say this is probably what's going to happen next?
Sometimes you can, you can.
See how it plays out.
Yeah. Another homicide was started as a pallet theft, and pallet theft from Lynn Jones. If
Yeah.
Lynn had a company that,
And
and may still have a company
Yeah, I
that
think they
produces
do.
pallets.
Yep.
Well, one of his employees was taking a few off the table there, and I'd been reporting on that for about 2 or 3 months. Eventually, the female party in that ended up as a homicide victim, and that was when Gobble was still the sheriff, and he called me on a Friday night. He said, "We found the body at the cemetery." Well, I knew the girl had been missing, for a couple, 3 weeks. He said, "We found the body at the cemetery." I said, "Well, no kidding,
Yeah.
How many bodies couldn't you find at the cemetery?"
Yeah.
We were at the cemetery. He said, no, we found a body at the cemetery.
Not buried.
Yeah, well, no, it was buried. He had buried her in a garbage can, and I wouldn't want to dug the hole for the garbage can myself. A dang 50-gallon garbage can.
Yeah.
You have to dig a big hole.
When would he have dug it? At night?
I imagine so.
Boy, how would you like to drive up on that?
I wouldn't.
I'd have kept going.
But anyway, eventually that story played out. He ended up in Florida and had a wreck. And as crazy as he was, he confessed to officers down there that he'd killed his girlfriend.
Do you think people have to confess? Is it something
this
in
guy was-
human nature?
This guy, I was very familiar with him because, as we stated earlier, played in the Buccarino band. Well, these folks came up to the VFW where we played every week, and I got familiar with them. I knew who they were. I knew the female involved and the male. I didn't know them, but I knew who they were, and studied their demeanor. I didn't ever want to get in trouble. Never have had that desire to go to jail. I don't look good in that color of orange.
Yeah, me. Yeah.
I like this color.
You're close.
Yeah, I'm close.
Yeah.
But I didn't ever think I looked good in that color orange, so I didn't want to go there. But I try to read people and stay away from people like that. So it's just a thing. You pick up on their actions and the way they act and react to things, and you can tell when some of them when they're full of bull and when they're not. When they're legitimate. This dude claimed that he was an Army Ranger. Well, he was. He was about as big an Army Ranger as I am.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another story. That was one that led up to a homicide. So simple theft, led up to a homicide.
But these people seem to want to confess, like the guy that killed his girlfriend and the other guy you mentioned that told about the Salvation Army. Is there something in people that makes them want to confess? They just can't live with the guilt?
Well, what happened was Goodhart had basically ratted out on Henrietta. And Henrietta really didn't have anything to lose, He was already going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Well, if he was such a good guy.
One part of that trial, though, that I didn't explain is the FBI was in the wing on that case. They were sitting in the wing to testify just in case they had to, in order to make sure that he never got out of prison. And coincidentally, I met the DNA expert who determined that Henrietta was the only one who committed sexual assault on this lady. And his name was Michael Giusti, spelled Giusti. I will never forget that name. And a couple of years later, I saw him on a crime show, explaining the DNA find, that he had been involved with, and then years later, as time unfolded and the job that I'm in, I ended up on Snapped and Sins and Secrets. So,
Was you on the show?
Oh yeah, been on both of them.
Which episode?
It was the case over in Meigs County. It was really one that I didn't follow really heavily,
So what did you have to do?
I explained.
What was the name? Sins
and Secrets was one of them, and the other one is Snapped, of course.
Were they both about the same story or different
Yeah,
stories?
they were both the same story, just little different format, as far
Did
as.
they call you?
Yeah.
What did they call? How does that happen? I mean, who called you?
The producers did,
Said,
because I'd done the
they
stories.
said, "Hello, is this Greg?"
Yeah.
You said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Well, they asked if I knew and if I would be interested in, if I would appear, and Snapped.
Did they pay you anything?
No, I didn't.
They
no. Just general interview, and what they cameo in and cameo out, come back in a little bit later in the story,
Did they edit or take
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
Did you say more? Did you say a bunch of stuff and they ended up just putting this much on there?
Yeah, basically that's what it amounted to. And
Was
I
that
did both of them on my locations. One was up in Charleston, and then the other one was on the other end of the river.
In Charleston, you used to. The last time I saw you, or maybe not the last time, but I saw you up at Hardy's in Calhoun, and you were renovating your
yeah.
house. How long ago has that been?
Oh, it's been a while.
A couple of years.
Oh, yeah, it's been several years. But I worked
Did you
on it
ever
as
get-
much as I could, and I had to get rid of that stuff. So
Did you sell it?
it wore me out. It was just a big job, big house.
Wasn't that like a historical place or something?
It was,
or just old?
It's the Lewis Ross House. There was no city of Charleston at the time of the Cherokee inhabitation here.
Which would have been what,
Bradley County.
1838?
Actually the home was built in 1819. The original bones are encased in that property, in that house somewhere.
1819. It was Cherokee Nation.
Cherokee, yeah. It was a reservation.
It was built by the Cherokee.
It was built by Lewis Ross. Lewis Ross was John Ross's brother. John Ross was the longest standing chief of the Cherokee Nation.
Was that the one in Polk County, the John Ross place?
No, it's in Rossville, Georgia's named after.
Yeah.
Ross's Landing. There was no city of Chattanooga. A lot of these people have not put these things together. Of course, with my investigative mind, I try to think and theorize. And I've theorized a lot about that. And the original address for that house is number 1 Market Street.
And
The address now is 373 Market Street. Now, in my thought, that brings our zip code prefix 37311.
now you're way over my head.
I know, but it's just theory. It's not proven. It's theory.
Now let's see.
373. Why would you come up with 373? Unless there was a reason for it.
But let's go back to what
the original address is number 1 Market Street.
But let's go back to 1819.
Okay.
Why'd they have an address then?
They didn't. They owned the whole thing. There was no city of Charleston.
He just had a house there.
He
He was
built
a
a-
Cherokee.
He built a home. He built a home for he and his wife. And he and John owned, and Timothy Meggs owned outposts throughout several places along the rivers.
They weren't savages as
No,
well.
Lord, no. They were very educated. In fact, he was a chief justice. He played several different roles. He was the treasurer of the Cherokee Nation. Lewis was treasurer of the Cherokee Nation. He was a chief justice at one point. He died in 1870, and when he died, see, they had migrated to Tahlequah. Tahlequah, Oklahoma, was where the infamous Trail of Tears ended.
Ended, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now, the Tahlequah, the actual name of Tellico is Tahlequah in a Cherokee language. If I'm not mistaken, that's the way it was
I
told.
think, and that's why they.
Now, Tellico is a dirty version of Tahlequah. In other words, it's the more slang version of the actual name of Tahlequah. But they migrated westward to Tahlequah, and he died in 1870. John died a couple of years prior to that, but when he died, he was worth $1.5 million.
Did he?
1870. Figure that out.
So he's the one that sold the land.
essentially, he and John worked for the peaceful removal of the Cherokee Nation. And that whole area there is Fort Cass. That was all up Dry Valley Road.
There's a
was
sign
known
there
as- exactly.
in front of the red barn.
Exactly. It's
Was
known
that
as-
red barn? That's
all Fort Cass. And the spring, Rattlesnake Springs, where a bunch of them were encamped.
which is where?
It's John Moore's farm on Dry Valley Road.
Where the airport is.
Opposite side, yeah, in that area. But anyway, they migrated to the west.
So he
And they
sold
left their
out.
lands.
Did
Well-
he get all the money?
He got some, well, he didn't get what it was worth, you know. He had sections, and he owned property across the river and up the river on the Charleston side.
Was he?
But they owned, what they did, they owned trading posts. And he and John and Jonathan Meggs.
Which is where we get Meigs County.
Exactly, or McMinn, I'm sorry, McMinn. And if you look
We
at
need
this,
Joe Guy here.
If you look
You know
at
who
this,
that is?
oh yeah, oh yeah. If you look at, Joe and I played I played Lewis Ross at McMinn County. I was his character at the McMinn County Centennial or Bicentennial, whatever their thing was here a while back, a couple years ago. But anyway, I was his character, and Joe was.
I've
he
been
was
trying to get
something.
Joe to come in here, but he's too busy.
Yeah. But anyway, the land he owned, there was no city of Charleston. The city center was across the river at Calhoun. That's where his daughter, Sarah Elizabeth, is buried,
Where was the city center?
in Calhoun,
Where at?
just across the river right
But
there.
I mean, at the police station
Well,
or
right in
Low
that area,
Waters?
yeah. All that's,
Is her? Can you go to her grave?
oh yeah, yeah.
I bet it's that cemetery across from the police station.
No,
Is it?
it's
or behind the police
It's
station.
behind the police. It's behind the church, actually, the First
Behind the
Baptist
church, yeah. Across from the utility company there.
Yeah,
up
in
on the
that
hill.
area. In that, no. Let's see. No, it's a little bit further west or east of there. But anyway, it's very easy to find. It's behind the First Baptist Church, or beside it actually.
Yeah. You go behind the police station, you can go up that little gravel road, and you're there, I think.
It's up in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's paved road though.
But anyway, that was his daughter.
Sarah Elizabeth, she died when she was 2 years old, and she's buried over there. And of course, the rest of the family's buried in. It's not Tahlequah. It was another little town they had it established right up in that area. In fact, some of the relatives are still the Murrell House, Murrell, it's still a home. But anyway, the house that I had, it had 17 rooms, and there was no small areas. There was no small space, no easy way to do anything.
Why'd you buy it?
I just did. I was interested in it, and that's it. But anyway, I finished most of the upstairs. I liked one room, having the whole upstairs done. And as I said, there was no small areas. There were 2 staircases. The main staircase, or the staircase at the foyer in the front of the house, was a staged staircase. It went up to a landing and then on up to a bigger landing. And even the landing there was a room. It was just big, you know. And the hallway to the backside, there was a staircase there, and that room was big. But it's just a long hallway, and it's about 45 or 50 feet down through that hallway.
Is that the house that's got a sidewalk in the back that goes all the way to that road? It's got bushes on both sides of the sidewalk going out to the back road. Where is that house?
It was 373 Market Street, and the reason it's called Market Street is because it was a trading post. Now let's put two and two together, okay? Where is Ross's Landing?
Chattanooga,
It's in Hamilton County.
Hamilton County.
What became Hamilton County? That's Ross's Landing.
Ross's Landing is Hamilton County.
Ross's Landing is Hamilton County. That's the name. That was the name of it. It wasn't Hamilton County or Chattanooga.
How did Ross get it?
They had they established reservations.
Didn't they run off the Utes? When the Utes were there before them?
I don't know. Now the Utes are if I'm not mistaken, is a Western.
I think they were here before the Cherokee, and the Cherokee ran them out.
I don't know. They very well may have.
But John Ross came
But
from
if I'm not
somewhere.
mistaken, the Utes are like a New Mexico tribe in that area.
They moved, I think. But where did John Ross come from?
John Ross was born to Daniel Ross, and that's where Rossville, Georgia comes from. As I said, where is Market Street in Chattanooga? That's a good question. Market Street in Chattanooga is where? What is the head of Market Street in
Ross's
Chattanooga?
Landing.
I rest my case. What was the head of Market Street in Charleston?
Hiwassee River.
Exactly. And of Ross's Landing, another Ross's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
They had these trading posts set throughout the state. And as the removal began, see, they had rations placed along the way. Lewis Ross's job was to procure all rations to make the Trail of Tears, along what became the Trail of Tears. It wasn't known as the Trail of Tears. It became the Trail of Tears. But anyway.
So they rounded them up from this area.
They rounded them up
Took
all
them
the
to
way
Case.
from Georgia, from Neuochota, which is Calhoun. That was their capital. And Alabama, brought them all together at Red Clay. And from Red Clay, they moved them to Charleston.
Because they had sold the land to them?
They came over, they discovered gold. This is the story. They discovered gold in Georgia. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court because the white man, the Europeans, were taken over and wanted to get the Cherokee out of there, even though these people were educated. Most of them were educated.
Evidently.
And a lot of them were still not savage, but they were a peaceful people doing and living their own lives. They weren't rich by any means, but they were living their own lives, you know. But anyway, they took over and run them out of the state of Georgia. And the reason was because of the gold in Dahlonega. And when they shut the capital down at Neuochota, which is Calhoun, Georgia, they came across the line to Red Clay. Red Clay was their last capital before the removal. And they held the tribal council.
That's where they agreed to leave, right?
That's where they held the tribal council. And they had to agree. Well, there was some detractors in that system. There were a few of the Cherokee elite who went under, who were unauthorized to make a treaty. And they made a treaty and sold out, which basically facilitated in maneuvering and strategy the chief John Ross and Lewis and all of them. They had to negotiate a peaceful removal. That's what precipitated the negotiations which furthered a removal. Now this case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Davy Crockett who
was from Tennessee.
Who was from Tennessee, from Greenville area, who was an opponent to the removal, and Andrew Jackson was the president. He disregarded the Supreme Court decisions on the removal, and the state of Georgia militia had moved them already all over to the Tennessee side, ran them out of the state of Georgia. And then they moved them to what is known as Rattlesnake Springs and Fort Cass. As Fort Cass was established at that point. And Lewis Ross had land, which there was no city of Charleston. As I said again, there was no city of Charleston. They took a piece of his property and established the Indian Agency. And you can go down here to the Museum Center and you'll see the letter that he wrote to the president. And he was condemning the president of the United States for taking part of his land. It's a very, very deep and interesting story, very convoluted. It goes in so many different directions. It's a very political story, and to see how they operated back then. Of course, there wasn't a telephone, there wasn't a telegraph, there wasn't anything, you know. They communicated by letters. And there would be, you know, Lewis may sit down 4 or 5 times a day and write a letter, you know. And John would do the same. They'd write back and forth in their strategy and study. And these letters went out. That was their work.
What type of mail was there then?
Well, it would have
stagecoach.
I imagine so, yeah. But it was, if you just have to think about it, what they had to deal with back then. And
it sounds like they weren't as savage, but why did the Indians?
Oh no, they were educated.
But why would the Indians just say, "Okay, we'll leave"?
Well, they gave up their land.
What did they get for it?
You have 7 tribes, seven states involved. 7 states where the Cherokee and the Seminole basically were involved. And
what did they get in return?
Well, they got paid, but it was nothing. It was just a fraction of
they
what
got paid and got to leave.
They lost everything they had. See, they lost their land.
And so the Trail of Tears started at Case Land at Fort Case.
No, it started in my yard. At the house in Charleston. In fact, Alan Jones embargoed a tree which was cut down from there, a big white oak tree, and he still got it at his farm.
Embargoed?
He embargoed. He held it. He made the insurance company was going to require it to be cut down because it was so big. It was planted in 1819 when Lewis built a house. In 1838, they signed the final paperwork under that tree. He, John, and General, let me think.
It'd be harder to get Allen to cut the tree than it would be to get the Indians out, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was. It really was. It tied it up for over a year. General, let me think of his name. If you go through the city of Charleston, you'll see the street names are Cass, Worth, Wool.
Yeah.
Those are named after generals and people involved. Cass was the Secretary of War. The general that I'm thinking about is, I know it just as well as I know my own name.
If we think of a road over there, it's probably named after him, right?
Yeah. Anyway, that general went on, he didn't pass away until 1850s or 60s, and he went on to lead several different wars. He was they didn't want him to retire. He wanted to retire, and he just couldn't.
Now, where did the Trail of Tears end?
Trail of Tears ended in Tahlequah. That's just a little over 1,000 miles, right at 1,000. And each year, the riders, there's a group of Cherokee that gets together from the Eastern Band.
That's right.
And
they ride the
Cherokee
motorcycle.
Nation.
No, they ride bicycles.
And they meet up. They come by the house up there and stopped, and I'd take their picture, and all that stuff.
I've seen that in the
newspaper. But the thing about it is, here I am out in old wore-out pair of blue jeans falling off of me, mowing the yard, just clandestinely, and nothing, no big deal, just a day to me. I'm out in the front yard mowing. And here comes Chief of Cherokee Nation. Here you are looking like crap.
Is that a big deal now?
Oh, it was. Yeah.
I mean, the Chief of the Cherokee Nation.
Oh, it's the President of the United States, if you think about it.
How many people would he be over?
Well, he's over
or representing.
You have the Cherokee Chief, the Chief of the Cherokee, the Eastern Band, and then you have the Chief of the Nation. You have 2 different chiefs of 2 different sects, but they're, that's the way it's ruled. That's their.
So the Eastern Band,
and we'd have the U.S. the Cherokee federal marshals there. They would come. They would come and escort. So I'd have all these people there. but I got smart and learned when they were going to come. But still, they would catch me off guard. They would.
How did you know so much about all this history?
I just studied it, and just keep. You learn different stuff all the time, and theorize about it.
When you're on Upper River Road and there's that sign that says this is where Fort Case was.
Fort Cass.
Fort Cass. It's in front of a red barn.
Oh, there's.
But somebody says
there's signs that should be on Highway 11. See, I was my street, Market Street, was the old Highway 11. It's got a marker there that says Historic U.S. Highway 11. That was the old road. That was the main road.
When?
Back when?
In 18.
Oh well, it was till the bridge was built across.
When was it put in?
Probably 50s.
But I mean, in 1817?
Okay, there was a railroad bridge in 1850s built.
But what about 1817?
Well, there would have been a small footbridge, a wooden bridge. And it was a wooden bridge because it was a wooden bridge because during the Civil War they burned it,
Was that
Kate was one of the Kate family, one of their ancestors was one of the people that burned it. And they were jailed for that.
Kate?
Yeah, Kate's Lane and all that up through there, up Dry Valley. Tom that his family, back when.
Yeah.
And I don't know who else, but there were 3 people involved in that burning of that bridge.
Now, if you drive to the end, when did they put in Market Street?
Market Street's been there it was the only street there.
Well, it would have had to have been
in 1817, 1819, the house was built. He resided there and he ran there were several buildings. He had apple orchards and all kinds of things there. He had his trading post. He had a ferry across the river. All these things.
Would it have been a stagecoach
Now,
stop?
he would have had a ferry. There was no bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, in the 1850s, there was a bridge built.
It would have to have been down there.
It was a railroad bridge. Now the reason it's 1850s, 1854, the Tennessee-Georgia Railroad, if I'm not mistaken, is what it was called, came in. That was the first railroad.
From Rat.
Pardon?
Rot.
R-A-H-T.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if Rod had anything to do with that or not.
He got the station here.
He may have, yeah. But anyway, we know that there was a bridge there at that point in time because the bridge was burnt during the Civil War. But see, at that time there was nothing there but Lewis Ross. He owned it all.
And his house.
He owned it all, well, in his buildings, And I actually, as I said, through my little detective work, and sniffing things out, I was actually able to get the old house. I couldn't get it on the registry because I used the wrong wording. The Historic Registry, National Historical Registry. I used the wrong wording. I just didn't put my thinking cap on. But I did get it certified through the National Park Service. Now that and a couple of dollars would get you a cup of coffee, but it just meant that basically it is a national monument and it's on the National Park Service listed as a part of the history of the Trail of Tears. What were you going to do, fix it up? Yeah, well I did. I put a beautiful kitchen in it. I loved it. But anyway.
Who'd you sell it to?
I just got it gone, but they're actually wanting to sell it now because it's too big for them, just too much.
Now, you said John Ross's father was Daniel Ross.
Daniel Ross.
Which was Rossville, Georgia.
Yeah. Well, it all
Where did he
came
come
from John. Actually, they're Scottish. They were more Scottish than they were Cherokee. I think it were just 8% Cherokee or something of that nature. Wasn't
even
much.
Ross, he wasn't really a Cherokee.
No, but he grew up Cherokee. His mother, I think, is if I'm not mistaken.
Daniel Ross must have married a Cherokee.
Yeah.
Because the money goes through the
the dowry. But it's a very, very interesting story. There's a lot of history. If you're interested in reading about it, go to the history branch, and there's a whole section.
In Charleston?
No, here.
Oh.
there's a whole bookcase of books with letters from John Ross to so-and-so, John Ross to Cass, John Ross to Lewis.
But how did Daniel Ross come? If he was Scottish, he came over just a little while after Columbus.
Yeah, they came in fairly early.
On the Mayflower. What was
I
it?
would say it's
His grandfather. No, let's see. What was it? Columbus, 1572.
it
Columbus.
would have been
14.
very early 1600s.
Yeah.
Because as I said, 1700s.
Do you study anything else in depth like that?
Well, I don't know, not really, not anymore. I don't even study that anymore. I've
How
just
about
got my
UFOs?
summation. Oh Lord, no.
No chance.
No chance.
Flat Earth.
Flat Earth, no.
This is all simulation.
Are we an ant?
I don't know.
That's something I've always.
Are we an ant of?
Are we an ant? Are we an ant on a mound of dirt?
It's like that movie, Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah.
Remember? Did you see that movie?
No, I'm not that old.
You need to see it.
I really
It's
don't.
not that old, but it's Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah.
They find out that they're just.
Yeah, they're just a being.
They were just a dot, on a dandelion.
Oh yeah, exactly.
To-
And that's what we wonder. We have to wonder: are we just a piece? We're
That's
all a piece
that's
of this.
something we can't research other than the Bible.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's nothing to research.
And we're going to get into politics a little bit here. We've discussed a lot of things, and
You've been
come
trying.
No, I'm trying to stay away from it. I'm actually trying to stay away from it.
Okay.
But we're going to get into a little politics.
Go ahead.
America is the great melting pot.
Sure. Well, it evidently was. Could just find
Exactly.
out the Cherokee that had the trading post was his father was Scottish.
Oh yeah.
But none of us are purebred.
Okay. Oh no. And that's something that I don't understand why it's that there's so many people who are the tag of racist. There's nobody pure. We're not pure.
I'm part Italian and part.
Well, I've never done that, but I want
yeah.
to do that. See what I am. My name is Kaylor.
Yeah, are you related to Kevin Kaylor or any of them?
No, he spells it with a C, but I did do his wedding.
Oh, you just spelled it yours with a K.
Just about everybody that you can mention.
What do
I
you
did
think
their
your
wedding.
heritage is?
My heritage, essentially, is German, and it would have been probably. I think it's the North German. We've always heard the phrase Black Dutch. Okay, that means the Black Forest of the Dutch or Deutsch community. The Deutsch is actually how it's supposed to be pronounced. It's not really Dutch. But Deutschland, I imagine, is how it's actually.
Like a Deutschmark?
Yeah, exactly. But Kaylor is actually a derivative of Kohler. The commode people, and I didn't get a penny out of that. But anyway, we're going to get
You've
into.
been able to use them, hadn't you?
Oh yeah, I've ended up using them. But anyway, we're going to get into politics a little bit. What was we talking about?
You were trying to talk about politics.
Yeah, but what was I talking about up there?
Well, I don't know.
Your name.
Yeah, your name.
No, prior to
No,
that.
prior to that.
You never alluded to politics yet.
You were thinking about
We're
getting
hung out on
into.
legs.
Oh, we're a melting pot.
Oh yeah, we're the great melting pot.
Yeah.
Well, and if you get right down to it, if you think of the great melting pot, we are all melded together, and we're all different things, and somebody's precipitated it. We're all racist, or you're a white supremacist, or what have you. Why can't we all just get along? That's number one. Yeah. We all need to love everybody, and in the bigger scheme of things, we're the great American experiment. Who's to say that we're not God's experiment? Until he finds a generation of people, let's say it a generation, we'll call it a generation. It's not really, in his eyes, 1 minute's 1,000 years, as far as we can figure. who's to say that we're not the perfect ones for the Lord to come back to? You know, we may be, but we may not be. You know, it's pretty well a fact. You know that throughout hundreds and thousands, maybe even 10,000s of years, there's life being prior to us, way before us. You know, we don't have oil here for a reason. You know, it was put here, and allegedly it was
Dinosaurs, right?
it comes from dinosaurs, the decaying bodies of dinosaurs. You know, who's to say that we're not part of God's experiment? Or did we pass the test? You know, in other words.
I'd say we failed it.
Well, we're failing right now, you know, and that's sad. That's really sad that our country, not only our country, but our whole world, you know, is failing at this. And it's sad that we have to live like that, you know, and you know, it's in essence, it's like they're trying to remove all of our heritage and everything else. And I do not like talking about this, you know, as far as this goes. They're trying to remove our heritage, our history, whichever, you know, whether you don't know where you're going.
You got to know what you did wrong.
Unless you know where you've been, you know. And that's one of those time things. You know, again, that's a time thing. We're here in a blink of an eye and we're gone, you know. We've lived the past 16, 17 months under a pandemic. And we sacrificed. People have sacrificed in order to survive. And the pandemic didn't bother myself and Donna quite as bad because we were already isolated. We had stayed with my mother for a year and a half. She had dementia and developed Alzheimer's, went into Alzheimer's full blown. And we cared for her for a year and a half before she passed. So that isolation didn't bother us quite as bad. And we skirted the fact that we could have got the COVID. Yet I had to go out all the time to buy groceries and do all the household business and all this stuff, you know, and I didn't really like to go out like that. I put a mask on, it smothers me. You know, I have a respiratory issue, which I can't wear a mask, and I was really vulnerable to it, you know, and you have to be grateful at some of the politics of life because hopefully we weren't that part of that experiment, you know, when we took the COVID shot, you know. Hopefully we weren't part of that experiment where we grow on a tail 3 years down the road, you know. But anyway, we have to endure these things and to get to a point in our lives, you know, and where that we leave Earth and everybody's, you know, look at the creator of Apple, you know, all this for nothing, you know, gone, you know.
Deader than 4 o'clock.
Yeah, dead, you know, he's just gone, and he realized that he was just an ant on an anthill, like everybody else. Couldn't do a thing about it, you know.
Do you study any of this Neanderthals and all this?
No, I don't study anything. Fox News about it.
But I mean, as
don't
far
even
as
watch it.
I mean, as far as we came from Neanderthals, all that.
No, I don't study.
You didn't go into that.
No, I don't study it. But I mean, and there's possibility of an evolution there, you know.
It doesn't discredit that there's
But
a God.
no, it doesn't discredit that at all. You know.
What religion were you raised primarily?
Baptist. But no, it doesn't discredit it at all, because they're, you know, even those people, they had I think that they had well, look at the Cherokee, you know, they were spiritual, very spiritual, and most of them were Christian.
How would they have become Christian?
Through the Methodists, believe it or not. There's basically the Methodist church was the big church at the time.
In the early early 1800s.
Yeah, 1800s. The Methodists established the communities, helped establish communities, and
Cherokee communities.
all communities, every community, just about every community. You know, that was the basis. They established the community, helped establish the communities.
What was the point of them doing that?
Well, they brought Christianity. It was a mission. Most of them were missions.
So a lot of the towns were started not because of trade.
Good example. Well, it was started because of trade or location, such as the river. But
So did
you
y'all-
also had a good example of this is Chickamauga Creek. Where is Chickamauga Creek? What's along Chickamauga Creek? The Brainerd Mission. You know, and that's an obscure place that you wouldn't realize that there's a cemetery there. You know, and Indian mounds and all this and.
So a lot of that evolves around the Methodist Church doing outreach programs, I guess.
Yeah, but mission. It was
So a lot of the
missions.
Cherokee were, you know, we think of
they
them
were
as
converted.
worshiping the sun and the moon, but
They believed in those things, but they still had a sense of a higher power. But you know, they learned through mission work, through the missionaries.
what is it about human beings?
And there are a great number of missionaries recorded through history of doing this, you know, of doing this stuff, and going and helping establish churches and communities.
And that was not for personal gain.
No, they were very humble. You know, it's just a story of how things
I wonder
evolved.
why the Methodist Church and not the Baptist, or I wonder why them.
Baptist probably wasn't. There probably wasn't even a Baptist. I don't know when the Baptist was established. It's a good question. You know, the Church of God evolved off of Baptist, I imagine. I don't
think
know.
the Church of God evolved off of the Shakers, maybe,
May have, but
or vice versa. But what is it about human beings? They want to have a higher power.
just look for leaders. Some do. that faith, you know, looking for that faith, that somebody to help lead you, you know. You can just be your boss so far, you know. You can just be your own boss so far. I think that's what it amounts to.
Explain that.
Well, it's just like you know. You think you're the boss? Well, I guarantee you I can go to your house.
Yeah. Or come here in the morning.
Yeah, I'll come here in the morning when you got, yeah.
Yeah, you think you're the boss till
Yeah.
the brick masons
Exactly.
show up.
Exactly. Being the boss is hard, you know, and somebody to rely on, you know, to look for leadership or
How far
comfort.
can you be the boss?
I don't know.
But you can only be it so far.
I think so. I think you can only be the boss so far. You know, you ask for that guidance. You know that you ask for that guidance, and what's my next move? You know, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I do this? You know, so many different little questions can pop up there. You know, and you know, I made the comment about my mother just a few minutes ago. I'm not a religious person. Religion is probably a bad word in my book, and this is where I see it. This is my philosophy, my thought about it. Religion has started many wars. There's wars going on right now. There's bombs falling on Israel. And religion has started many wars. But the spirituality within you is what counts. If you've been witnessed and you've accepted Christ and all this, religion is just a word. It's a word which is a general word for an overall description of what you should be, or seemingly should be. Spirituality is what you got within yourself, in my thought. And there were many times with my mother, we had to do everything. We mitigated a tornado with her. And trust me, when you have respiratory issues and 64 years old and try to pick up a 5'11" woman who still weighs 165 pounds out of a hospital bed and try to get her to a safe space when a tornado's coming through. It's tough. And everything that we had going with her issues, we went from one of the sweetest people in the world to being, a little mean, of course, because of the nature of the disease. And then going further into that, totally bedfast, and having to do everything with her, as far as everything. Well, there would be, every night, there would be a prayer to do what we needed to do the next day, or to answer a question. And those questions were answered timely. You always hear the term, in God's time. Well, each and every time that I asked for help and what we needed to do the next day or that night or whenever, we got the answers. And, it's not a physical speak, but it's laying there in sleep and coming awake, and getting the answer to what you needed. A good example is, as most people who are bedridden, they develop bed sores. She had a small one. And, we had that thing just about healed totally up because I got those answers. Of course, we had hospice. She had hospice and had that treatment and all that. And they took really great care of her, great people. But to get those answers and know what to do, and like I said, we got that thing nearly healed up, and then you develop another one in another spot. And then you develop another one. And then this thing gets just so totally out of control, you can't get anything else. But we did bring, and then you ask yourself, well, did we do the right thing by requesting this and requesting this prayer and requesting answers? You do one thing, it may offset or throw something else in the mix. Like you give, she doesn't eat. If she doesn't eat one day, what do? You give her a boost to get some nutrition. Well, the boost causes impactions. So you fight one battle every day, figure out which battle you've got to fight, and how to mitigate and work through that. And spiritually speaking, every time we got those answers. And we would do these things and try them. There was one time, when she was early onset of dementia, no, I take that back. She had already elevated into Alzheimer's. And you can tell the difference. She changed from a Wednesday to a Friday.
What's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
There's several different types. You have dementia, and then you have Lewy body. You have several. You have prefrontal lobe dementia, or pretemporal, however it's termed. You have Lewy body dementia, which Robin Williams had. He had Lewy body. It's the characteristics of the disease, and you could recognize. Now, my mother was never truly diagnosed. Now, my daddy was. He had prefrontal, and he never was really a problem as far as being ill or mean or anything. But he had an issue with. He was nervous all the time, so we gave him Tic Tac. He thought he was getting Xanax or something, But my
Did
mother
it
was
help?
never
Did it
like
help
that.
him? The tic tac?
Not really, because the next 3 seconds he'd be asking for another one, you know. But that's the difference in the characteristics of the disease. One of the best description I ever had of dementia or Alzheimer's was you take your age, or you take the age of the patient. My mother was 86. Take that age and write it on a piece of paper. 80, 70, 60, 50, all the way down to 0. And then you follow that all the way back to 0, excuse me. You follow that all the way back to 0, and that's the end of the life. Every day, I would ask her what she did that day at bedtime. I'd ask her what she had done. Where were you working? You know, what did you do? She never forgot Donna or I. She did have a little problem with my sister one time, but she never forgot us, and that's kind of odd, you know. But we was with her 24/7 for a year and a half, you know, and it was brutal. It was,
Did she need that much attention?
100%. She needed more than we could give her, you know, and that was 2 of us.
What was your first sign that she had a problem?
She fell and broke her hip, and at that point I knew, and see, I would always tell her. I'd talk to her every day, a couple times a day most of the time, but anyway, I'd talk to her every day, and I'd ask her, have you got your glasses on? Have you got the TV on? Have you got a lamp on? You got your got your hearing aids in? And she'd answer, no, you know, all the questions. So she took it on herself one day. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around in there, she was going to go out and trim a little limb off a tree that had been bothering her. So she took a pair of scissors, walked out in the yard, took that little limb, and took those scissors and tried to cut it. Well, when she did it, she pulled back on it and fell out of her walker. Didn't have any of those things. Had taken them all off because she was going to take a bath at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, you just question these things. You start questioning. So she fell and broke her hip. We don't know really how long she had laid there. She thought she had laid there maybe an hour or so. But anyway.
Did you suspect then, hey, she may have
Well,
that?
you could see, you could start to figure, but see, any trauma exacerbates or it moves it forward. So at that point, you know, she would always, and as I said, I talked to her every day. And at that point, I told her, she'd always ask, when are you coming to see me? Don't worry, Mom, I'll be there soon enough. Don't worry, I'll be there soon enough. But I wouldn't trade anything for that time. But it was just something, you know, that I knew what was going to happen. And I guess that's one of those time things, you know, reading into the future a little bit. Because my sister lives in Knoxville. And I knew she couldn't do anything. She's a teacher, but it was definitely a learning experience, and especially through what we were faced with the pandemic and all. And
because that came right before, didn't it?
Yeah. It came right before, and then we lived through it, of course. You know, funeral and all. Of course, she didn't know what we were going through, you know. And then you have...
When did she die?
September.
Of last year?
Yeah.
So we were right in the middle of all those questions.
Oh, yeah. But she never realized those things. She didn't know what it was. She couldn't understand them. The only thing she couldn't understand was why her aides, which, as I said, we had hospice in Chattanooga, who are wonderful people. And Leslie
Painter
now.
Smith.
Yeah, Leslie Smith.
She's perfect for that position.
Oh, They were absolutely a godsend. I mean, absolutely. You know, that's one of those prayers. And I mean, we had one hospice that wouldn't admit her. But they came out there and they said, she's very well qualified for hospice care. And that evening we had hospice. The next day, they had people out there. And we had her on hospice, under hospice care. She had 2 people come on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to give her a bath. And she had a weekly nurse visit, doctor. And any time that we called, whether it be 1 or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning,
What
whenever.
does that cost?
Well, their insurance or Medicare pays for it.
But it sounds like they do it.
It's unbelievable, the service that they provide.
That's obviously, it's not all covered. I mean, don't they have?
It's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Hospice of Chattanooga is a nonprofit.
Because they have benefits and.
Yeah. And, you know, if I ever have the opportunity and privilege to, you know, to go to one of those things, you know, if I can, I will, you know, because it's just, you know, naturally me, you know, I'm that sentimental type, you know, and I mentioned to everybody at her funeral, I had their chaplain even came, their chaplain and social worker even came after she passed, would come and visit just myself and Donna, just as aftercare. You know, we asked for those prayers, we asked through those prayers what to do, how to work through things, and it was a timely fashion that we got those answers, whatever that may be. She was, at one point, when we first realized she was really starting to move forward and from dementia to Alzheimer's, she did what is called sundowning. Sundowning is where they don't realize when the day ends. In other words, they don't know what is night and what is day. She stayed up for 4 days and 4 nights in a row. And we had hospice on board at that time. Hospice helped us somewhat. They provided all the drugs which we gave her and all of her medications. Well, I was the one who had to administer all the meds. And I did other duties as well. You know, Donna took main care of her, but I helped Donna with a lot of this stuff as well. And I took care of all the medical because chemistry is somewhat in some of my background. But we administered Haldol to her, haloperidol, and morphine. It would not knock her down.
When morphine doesn't do it, you got
When
problems.
morphine doesn't make that connection, you have an issue. 4 days, 4 nights, we dealt with her. Never closed her eyes. You know, it was always 100%. We had to be right there. And we were absolutely worn out after that 4 days. She did it several other times. And, you know, we laughed, we loved and laughed. We had fun, you know, because I'm a jokester, you know, and she was a jokester, and my family was like that. We always have fun. You try to have fun. And we can be serious, you know, and that was serious. That was a serious issue. But we always tried to make light of it. And, you know, if we didn't laugh, we couldn't have survived. And we just had little things that we'd come up with, you know. Donna one night opened the cabinet door in the laundry room. And my mother was a beautician by trade, by profession. So she had a bunch of wigs up in the top of a cabinet. Well, these things started falling out on her, you know. God. And Donna she's just trapped in that little room trying to get out of there, you know, because these wigs, she's trying to get out there because she thought there was rats or something jumping out on her. That was a hilarious part. But anyway, she come dragging one of those wigs in there and put it on my mother, and then we took our picture, you know, a selfie picture of all of us. And my mother just had the biggest grin on her face, you know.
Did she have periods when she was coherent? And
Yeah, yeah. As I said, trauma exacerbates or moves forward that level of dementia or Alzheimer's. But in the same vein, this is the oddity. Trauma also releases endorphins, which brings clarity for a while. And that was something I found truly odd. After she had come home from rehab, after breaking her hip, I knew that was the time that we had to move in with her, or at least one of us said, well, we did, we stair-stepped. I'd stay with her a night, Donna'd stay with her a night, or we'd both stay, or something like that, because we had residence elsewhere. Anyway, she fell. I was sitting there talking to my sister on the phone, sitting outside in the swing, and my mother comes out the door with a walker, and she has a little ledge stepped off the patio of the porch, about this tall, where she come off the step sideways with the walker turned just a little bit. Mm-hmm. So when she did that, she started to tumble. And I brand new phone, just got it that day. I tossed that phone. It went under the chair, and I got under her just enough to break her fall just a little bit. And she hit that concrete patio, and it brought her back. I had to call EMS to get her up, and they checked her out, Well, a couple of months later, she started the falls. She started falling.
so she had clarity for a month or so?
She had clarity at that point, and this was not the only time that she had that clarity. She had clarity for several hours after the endorphins wore off, I imagine, and adrenaline. Then she'd go back to that state, She was very argumentative at times.
Was it stuff that was silly that she normally wouldn't get upset about?
Yeah.
But she was genuinely serious?
She was so mad at me.
And genuinely mad at you?
Oh, yeah, genuinely mad. I've got
Isn't
video
that disturbing?
of her. I've got video of her standing talking into a mirror thinking she's looking outside of a window, hollering for the neighbor to come and help her.
Isn't that disturbing?
Oh, yeah. She would try to make phone calls on the remote control for the TV, They took my phone away,
That reminds me of something. I used to share an office with John Paul Douglas.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And somebody asked him about something. He said, I'll figure out what that cost. And he lifted the phone receiver up and he started calculating on the phone thing.
Oh, yeah.
He thought it was, and he was just busy.
Yeah.
He just wasn't giving him the answer.
Yeah. It's just, there were times that she was there, but that's something that we, that I noticed that she would just jump out of that when that trauma occurred.
Do you think if it would matter if it's Alzheimer's or dementia or this frontal lobe, or is it all basically the same?
It basically is.
Give it
but
whatever.
It's the characteristics, and it depends. That determines their demeanor, what they're going to go through, how they're going to react. But as I said, I would ask her every day where she was, what she'd done. One of the last things that my dad said to me, well, it was the last thing he said, I got to get up and go to the outhouse. The next morning, he'd passed away. It took me several months to figure out what that meant. He had reversed, and he was literally looking for the outhouse, because that's what they had back when he was a child.
You realize this is going back to you telling your stories, give the ending?
To the beginning. Yeah. The ending of the beginning. But that's what I'm saying.
That's spooky, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But, that was...
But you talk about these things about having prayer and they're answered the next day. I have that phenomena very often.
Yeah.
And when you go through that, it's hard to think that there's not a God.
Oh, exactly.
We
got the answers, brother. We got the answers.
And so specific.
Oh, yeah.
And people
And
say
these
to
are
me,
things that they just don't come.
and you can't explain your situation to me, and I can't
Yeah.
explain it to you, and I'm figuring that's because it's
This
too.
is something that common sense or common knowledge will give you.
That's right.
This is an answer, and it's an answer from on high. Just the way it is, you know. Proven to me several, just every day for a year. You know, it's just that simple.
And we can't question it
No,
now.
there's no need to question it because you know where it came from. I mean, these are things that just, you know, like I said, give me the answer. Well, the answer is you gave her a boost. That's going to cause a problem. How do you mitigate that? How do you deal with that? You know, you get her. Lord, how are we going to deal with this pressure sore? Well,
Now, some people would say,
You know-
well,
you
it's
know
just
how?
because you figured it out.
no. You know how?
How?
Protein. Protein heals sores. So I made sure that she ate plenty of proteins and got plenty of protein. I started making her protein-filled shakes, milkshakes. We'd share a milkshake. Boy, I'm telling you, that's a story. I made her a big old milkshake one night. And I'm a little jittery.
Yeah.
At times, especially when I get tired, I'll start to get a little jittery. I took her a big old full glass of milkshake in there. She just loved it. She's like me. She just drink it, suck her down. You know, oh, it's so good, you know. And took that thing in there to her, and I fumbled, fingered, and boy, it went everywhere. All over the bed, all over it. I started hollering, Donna, I need help. What? I figured I'd get fussed at. But
Isn't it funny the things you remember?
Oh, it's awful. It was that dang gallon of it too. It's not. I didn't give her no small glasses, but you know, but that's how that's how you find out. You know, you ask through prayer, and you know,
When the answers come
Lord,
like
Lord
that,
told me protein. Well,
how would you have known protein? You wouldn't have known that.
no. And I asked the nurses. I said, What can we do? How can we help cure this? You know, what do we do? We were putting Flagyl on. Flagyl is it's a pill that helps dry up infection. Mm-hmm. And then we would put silver nitrate and pack that wound. Mm-hmm. This wound started out very small, and it grew very, very big. You know, it encompassed her tailbone and everything. And then, of course, naturally, you're trying to turn her and keep her off of that particular. Each time you
being
turn,
comfortable is
you're fighting a losing battle because this pressure on this hip is going to cause a sore.
Yeah.
Or just the knees touching. We had we and Donna the same way. You know, she looked for things and it came to her. You know.
So if you
We
drink
had
protein,
pillows. We had things around her ankles to keep her, and we had a pillow that she'd found at the dollar store to put between her knees to keep her knees. Because what happens when you're laying in bed like that, your muscles degenerate, of course, and they start to draw or seize, you know, and I can't remember what the exact name of it is, but
spasms.
well, it's spasms, basically. I explained how what dementia really is and how it works, and how the narcotics and the drugs that you have to, the medications you have to give these people who are suffering from this, what the deal is, and put it in layman's terms. And realistically speaking, it's like you going out here as Burris Construction and building a road and building a bridge across that road to make a connection, correct? Okay. And that's the only connection that you have. There are no others. You can't go around this way to the left, or you can't go around to the right. You can't travel any miles or distance to find another way across that bridge. Okay, that bridge gets washed out, right? So you don't have a way to get across.
There's no connection.
Okay, that's the way the brain works. And with dementia and Alzheimer's, that's exactly the way it works. That medicine that you're giving them, you're trying to get that medicine to that part of the brain which shuts them down from sundowning. Correct? That bridge has been washed out. can't make that connection. There's no redundancy. Like in our 911
So how do you get it
system,
through there?
you don't. You just have to write it out. That's why I'm saying I was giving her 5 milliliters every 3 hours of morphine. I was afraid I was going to overdose her. And plus 3 milliliters and up to 5 milliliters of haloperidol. And there was nothing touching her. The bridge was washed out. There was no connection whatsoever that it could get to that part of the brain to shut her down.
So how did she shut down?
She finally wore it totally out. And then she slept for 2 or 3 days. And she didn't eat. So what do? We give her a boost. So what does the boost do? That impacts her. Everything, it's all the beginning of the end, you know. Time
It's
to
like
time.
water running off a table. You catch it,
Yeah. And
but you got to keep trying.
Yeah, you got to keep trying, and that's what we did, you know. So, time after time.
Well, if we believe the Bible, like we've just now
Yeah.
said, and believe in God, we got to believe in the Bible, and it says, "You will know as you have known." So
Oh, yeah.
I guess we will
Yep.
join these people on
Yep.
the other side.
Yep. But that's you know, that's. As I said, I wouldn't have took anything. I wouldn't take anything for that experience, you know, even though, and it still tugs at my heartstrings, you know, more so than my daddy's, more so than losing my dad.
It's not a good way to end it up.
No,
is
it's
it?
not. No, it's not. I hope I'm gone way before then. I truly do. I don't want to be like that, you know. And I know nobody does, I don't think. It's just an awful disease. Probably one of the worst diseases that anyone could ever imagine. But as I said, I wouldn't take anything for the experience with her and what we learned and how we passed things along to other people and what came out of it as far as the good. And there's nothing ever good or easy about letting go. She can lay you know, I would lay my face down to hers and tell her it was okay, you know. Tell her every night that we loved her, you know, and I can't regret any of that, and I can't regret any of the things that we did to try to help her and go through that part of that disease. And, you know, Mark Grissom was very involved in raising money for Alzheimer's and help, and he was very instrumental in helping a lot there too, you know, and a good inspiration. And we miss him every day too, you know. Very untimely death, you know, for to that loss for everybody who ever knew him and who had ever befriended him. And you know, he flew, John Miles and myself flew over the rock slide in Polk County years ago, and Mark was the pilot. He piloted. Of course, John was the pilot too.
Mark Grissom was a pilot.
He sure was.
Well, I didn't know that.
And I told him, I said, buddy, don't get
I
us
don't know
up
it.
here. I said, do not get us up here and let
I
us
knew
be a
him, but I
customer.
don't know if I'd have flown with it.
Well, I
Is he
didn't
a pretty
know
good
at that
pilot?
point in time. I didn't know, you
Yeah.
know. I didn't know that he was going to fly it because you know, Johnny Miles and myself, we were photographers.
Yeah.
You know, we worked together. He was video. I was a
Yeah,
photographer.
well, Johnny Miles, but I don't know about Mark as far as
But
flying.
anyway, I crawled
He
in
never
that
was
plane,
that technical.
And I told him, I said, dude, I said, you're the man. If we both go, I said, I ain't a pan.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to make this deal right out right now. But he was good, smooth as silk. Come in landing out here. Hardwick, that was when Hardwick was still out here. But come in just as smooth
I
as,
never knew he was a pilot.
smooth as,
I would have never dreamed.
smooth as silk, you know, just a smooth, good smooth. And we flew over the rock slide and did pictures and all that stuff. And, flew over the mountains. Beautiful, beautiful. And looking
Greg,
down on it, looking down on that rock slide was something.
now that COVID's over, you've watched after your mother, and everything's back to some form of normal. What's next
What's next?
for Greg Kaylor?
Well, I'm getting ready for the umpteenth time, getting ready to do a little remodeling.
You're gonna kill yourself.
No, I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to just direct.
You're gonna really kill yourself.
Yeah, probably. Actually, I'm probably going to get you to do it, or at least suggest somebody to do it. It's not going to be that big of a job. We just took a small house, like I said, and I don't want any more. We've had big, middle, you know.
Why do anything? Why not just live there?
That project was not the first project. You know, I've done probably nearly a dozen houses. Didn't live in all of them. I just helped people do stuff, you know. And my sister asked me, she said, how did you learn how to do this? And I said, well, I just did, you know, through time and effort. When we lived on Park Avenue, we took a 900 square foot house and it ended up about 2,700, you know. We took a roof and we moved the house first.
But why do anything?
We moved the house. It was where Don Ledford raised the family up a little bit. It was located on 17th in Georgetown, where the apartments are, the condos are at now. You know where I'm talking about?
Nevin Lane?
No, 17th Street. Where all the condos are at.
Oh, yeah.
Don Ledford's house sat back here in the corner.
I didn't realize that.
Farmhouse.
Yeah.
But anyway, we moved the house from there, 2 blocks north to Park Avenue. Everything was going smooth. Going to have Georgetown Road shut down in 5 minutes. Fell through the road. It fell through the road.
The house.
Yeah. I said, what was that? I was walking behind it. What was that? I said, uh-oh. So we dug it out, had Georgetown Road shut down for about 5 hours. Finally got it out, pulled it on into the lot, and had it up on the beams for months or so, you know, while we had the footer already poured, but didn't have the blocks up, foundation. So they set the blocks, and then we lowered it down and stripped it. Lived in it for 5 or 6 years, and then we did phase 2. Phase 2 required building a freestanding garage, which was 2-story, and it was 34 by 32, if I'm not mistaken. And 2-car garage. It had 2 laundry rooms.
How do you remember those dimensions?
Oh, I just do. Roughly 17 foot on each room.
How many years ago was that?
Park Avenue, 25.
And you remember how big the garage was?
Oh, yeah. But anyway, well, I had a 4-foot section in there. See, it was a freestanding garage, 4-foot section that went to that was open. And then it all attached to the main house, the main part of the house. We went up a story, took the roof off the back side of the house, came
know
around
where that house
and
is.
tied it in.
Yeah.
Came back around and tied it all together. So it all looks like it's one structure, but it's not. It's actually 2. But that 4-foot section, see, that was where your water heater and utilities and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a good place to park your lawnmower. That way you had plenty of garage space. And I went every 4 feet with outlets. Every 4 feet.
Every 4 feet.
Yep. And that's what I want on this next project. Every 4 feet, we're going to do a kitchen. We're going to open a wall up. It's just 1,000 square foot, small house. Good lot. In fact, I bought a house, or I bought a fence off of Marketplace. I gave $320 for it, $330.
Is that a good place to buy stuff?
Yeah. But I gave $330 for this used fence the guy took down, and he delivered it from Georgetown. And when he gets there with it, guess what it is?
What?
It's 5-quarter board. It's built, the dang fence is built out of 5-quarter board.
And he brought it down here for $300?
Yeah.
The stick must have stole it.
He just took it down. But anyway, I've got it up. I'm getting ready to have it painted and everything. But we
The
got it up.
5-quarter
got
board
the
would
gates.
cost you that now for 1 second.
We just sold my mother's house, and we sold it for about $170,000. And the kids that bought it, they're young, 20, 21 years old. And I got to figuring. I told them at the closing the other day. I said, guys, I said, you couldn't build the floor system today for this house, 1,600 square feet. I said, you couldn't build the floor system and the footing and foundation for what you're giving for this house. And I figured out it'd be $128,000 just for the Advantech sheeting. Because Advantech, when we did that, $74 to $84 a sheet. And it cost $128,000, I think is what I had it figured.
When I first started building, it was $6.
Oh, yeah. See, we got hung out on that one over on Park Avenue. That was when Katrina hit, and everything I got was premium. Every dang thing, the sheeting, the OSB, 5/16 or whatever it was, you know, we sheeted the whole thing with. It was a premium price. Advantech was a premium price. The only thing I got cheap was sheetrock, $8 a sheet. Yeah. But it was awful. But we went through that house. We totally rewired, replumbed, tore inside, outside walls, insulated inside, outside walls, tore all the lath and plaster out. Went back with sheetrock, finished it all. New kitchen, of course, you know. It had an old farmhouse sink in it, and I just kicked myself for getting rid of that thing. A drain board sink. I'd like to put it in this old house that I got. Looking back, but anyway, we're going to knock out a wall, expand the room. Dining room, kitchen will be all one big room, or bigger room, and add a bathroom, and take the existing bathroom and convert it to a laundry room.
Your fingernails are cut perfect.
Oh, well, that's pretty good for a blind guy.
What is it? Will you have them done?
No. I just did it day before yesterday. I seeded the flower beds. They're just, I don't know. I'll tell you, the best thing to use is those Dr. Scholl toenail clippers.
I guess.
They're good and big for old hands. You'll get to use them someday.
I guess.
But
Hey, Greg, it's been great.
appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.